This is the somebody. I forget the name that I didn't recognize. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the Finance and Audit Committee meeting of December 11th to order. I'd like to first recognize that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation. Clerk today will be Ms. Nicolina Vicar. We also have Councillors Armstrong and Gesselbrock attending electronically. Today's Finance and Audit Committee meeting will be held in accordance with the Community Charter and Council Procedure Bylaw 2018, number 7272. And if during the meeting any member of the gallery, and there doesn't appear to be anyone this morning, has a question related to an agenda item, you can sign the question period sign-up sheet on the table near to the double doors on my left. And please note that the Council Procedure Bylaw has been updated, so questions can only be taken on staff reports or other business items. I'm not seeing anyone in the audience today that isn't a staff person, so I'll skip over the long reminder about decorum. I'm sure we can trust staff to be all in the best behavior this morning. The first item on the agenda is the introduction of late items. Ms. Vicar, we have some.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, under other business heading, we would like to add agenda item 8A, 2025 to 2029 financial plan update. And I believe Councillor Hammonds would also like to speak at this time before the vote on the motion to add late items.
Councillor Hammonds.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would ask that we add the discussion slide regarding the Nanaimo Prosperity Corporation to today's meeting. I wasn't able to participate in the debate, and as the council appointee, I'd like to weigh in. Thank you.
Seems reasonable to me. Motion for adoption of the agenda is amended then. Moved Councillor Manley, seconded Councillor Perino. All those in favor? Excuse me, any opposed? None. Motion carries. Motion for adoption of the minutes is Ms. Vicar, sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just for clarification, the additional late agenda item will be added as a second item under other business. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion for adoption of the minutes is circulated. Moved Councillor Perino, seconded Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. We have no presentations. We have no delegations, but we do have reports. What a surprise. Ms. Mercer, Finance and Audit.
Thank you.
The financial results for the 9 months ended September 30th, 2024. Please.
Okay. So this report provides you information on both day-to-day operations and projects as at September 30th. For operating results at the end of Q3, we're projecting just over a $4.8 million surplus for all three funds. Attachment A to the report will give you a brief description of any variances over 100,000, and Attachment B gives you an overview of all operating variances for all departments. So for the general fund, we are projecting just under a $6 million surplus. Most of that variance or that surplus estimate is made up of position vacancies. So we're still in 2024 having some difficulty filling positions, and that's caused various vacancies throughout the city. We also have anticipated $154,200 in additional revenues from grants in lieu of taxes, and that's from our provincial and federal properties, and that's higher than we anticipated. We have are anticipating about $100,000 more in investment income, and the RCMP contract is expected to be under budget by about $114,000. For the sewer fund, we're anticipating $138,900 surplus, and most of that relates to position vacancies as well. And in the water fund, we are anticipating a $1,250,200 deficit, and most of that results from lower than anticipated revenue for the year.
So in other words, it's good citizens and I were doing a great job on conservation, but it's costing us.
And we're still working out, some of we've changed the consumption structure, so we're just still working out some bugs in that. So in the spring, so February, March, staff will bring a decision report to council on surplus allocations. So per that reserve policy, any reserve that has fallen below the minimum balance will be topped up first from surplus, and the remaining will be allocated based on staff and council recommendations. So based on quarter three estimates, surplus allocations would be $114,000 would go into the RCMP contract reserve, and that's from the estimated surplus that we're expecting in the RCMP contract. $890,000 for the 2025 project contingency budget would be allocated from surplus per council's direction at the Finance and Audit Committee meeting from October 16th. And $618,938 would go to the General Financial Stability Reserve to meet its minimum balance. For the water fund, the annual allocation to the water operating reserve would be, the amount that's budgeted would be reduced by the deficit amount because as we know, we can't have a deficit. So the reserves would shore up that. Next, we have projects, and this provides a summary of the status of all projects as at September 30th, and that includes both operating and capital projects. So total project budget is $177.1 million. Spent or committed to date or to September 30th was $107.7 million, and that leaves funds available of $65.6 million to be spent by the end of the year. Attachment C will give you an overview, summary of the projects in each division and highlights the bigger projects in each area. And that's kind of the summary of the Coles notes of the report, and we're happy to answer any questions that you have.
Councillor Perino, always reliable.
Sorry, myself.
Apologize.
It's early morning. Thank you, Your Worship, and a question through you. So, just for the viewing audience, the surpluses that we have, is there potential to lower the tax rate, or is it too early to determine?
Through your worship to Councillor Perino, at this point, I would recommend that if you're going to do that, wait till the spring when we bring the surplus number back.
Okay, just to make sure.
Yeah, and because it's never a recommendation to use a it's not a stable form of tax reduction. It's like it's not a consistent year to year. So that wouldn't be our recommendation, but it is. We have done that in the past.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
We hope to grasp the life preserver, but it's not within reach.
You're darn right. That's exactly it.
Any other questions? Just out of curiosity and looking at the report, where were we last year, roughly speaking, at this time? Do you recall, in terms of potential surplus?
I looked at it before we came. I think it was around the same, maybe a little bit higher. But again, by the end of the year, we were quite a bit higher than that estimate for quarter three. The difference between the 2 years is this is we're later getting the projection, so we're thinking it might be closer to actual rather than last year when we did it. It was closer to October when we pulled those numbers, so we'll see.
Okay, Sarah. Thank you very much. The next item then is the council expenses for the 9 months ending September 30th, 2024. Always fun. The taxpayers will be watching and listening carefully to this one this morning, of course.
So this report, like you said, provides a summary of year-to-date expenses for each member of council as at September 30th. The information is compiled all year and is included in the Statement of Financial Information or the SOFI report at the end of the year. The report is for information only, and we're happy to answer any questions that you have.
No questions on council expenses? The next item then, thank you very much, is Culture and Event Grants 2025 funding recommendations. Yes, sorry, Councillor Manley, you're not, there you are.
I'm going to recuse myself.
Ms. Ricard, it's just a report, we're not a motion. Can Councillor Manley stay?
Your Worship, we're on Report C, which does include a recommendation from the Committee to Council. I was just going to note that we would need to have the rationale for conflict of interest provided for the public's information and record. Thank you.
Am I live now?
If we are
I'm-
approving, I'm just wondering if you can at least stay for the report, but if not, probably the safest course then is just to,
Yeah, I'm on the board of one of the organizations, and so is my wife, so.
okay.
I'll just-
Thank you very much. And I'll just recognize that Councillor Brown has joined us electronically as well. So it's the Culture and Events Grants 2025 funding recommendations. Ms. Osborne, good morning to you and your team. Thank you.
Good morning. The purpose of this report today is to recommend that Council approve the 2025 Culture and Event Grant Funds, that being Operating Project and the Downtown Event Revitalization Fund, to support the activities of the non-profit cultural and heritage organizations and to contribute to the success of events and initiatives planned for the downtown. So this year, we received 13 operating applications this year we've received 13 cultural operating applications. This stream has two sections, one that is a 3-year section, and examples of what those grants might fund would be the Nanaimo Conservatory of Music or the Vancouver Island Symphony. The 1-year stream examples would include the Nanaimo Concert Band, the Malaspina Choir, or the Nanaimo Arts Council. We received 17 cultural project applications, and examples of those might be the Ballroom Dance Society or the Nanaimo Theatre for Young People. And finally, we received 32 Downtown Event Revitalization Fund, which we call DERF. And a perfect example of those might be events hosted by the Crimson Coast Dance Society, the Blues Society, or the Old City Quarter. The total value requested this year was $963,806.79. Our total fund to allocate was...
If I may interrupt, Councillor Hemmons has noted that
Yeah, my apologies. I've just noted that the Vancouver Island Regional Library is a recipient of funds in this, and I am on the board. My apologies. I'm going to have to recuse myself.
for $640.
No problem.
Councillor,
Your Worship,
Councillor Brown.
Your Worship, that's a direct council appointment. We're protected under legislation. There's no conflict there. If it's the same as the RDN and hospital board.
I was just going to consult with Ms. Vicar, and I think Councillor Brown's nailed it. Ms. Vicar, agreed?
No concerns from my end. Thank you, Your Worship.
Welcome back. Do carry on. Sorry, Ms.
All right, I'll just go back. So the total value requested was $963,806.79, and the total funds available to distribute was $631,256. The report before you breaks down the distributions that our staff are recommending for the various local organizations. And today we have Ms. Mercer and Ms. Sine here to answer any questions that you might have regarding the distribution or the process that was followed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions with respect to the recommendations? Everybody's had a chance to look through them. Councillor Thorpe and then Councillor Hemmons.
Thanks, Your Worship. Through you, if I may, I'm always curious on this, and I didn't specifically notice it in the report this year, but I'm always interested in follow-up with these grants and what degree the city monitors the effectiveness of the money and how it was used and spent, and determines the value for future reference.
Through His Worship to Councillor Thorpe, there is an expected evaluation process that's included in the distribution of the funding and the allocating. Staff do follow up with the organizations, and prior to reviewing next year's applications, we have to have received the evaluation and report back from each organization.
That's what I thought, but good to be assured of that, and I appreciate the work of staff applying the criteria that you have carefully developed for these grants. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you. Not a question. I just want to say I think this is a really great report. It really demonstrates the city's commitment to the nonprofit sector, to the arts and culture sector, and I'm happy to be in support of all of these. Thank you.
Thank you. And I must say, for what it's worth, I'm delighted that staff undertakes this process and not the politicians. This saves a great deal of time and saves us from criticism, because God knows there's always enough criticism available. So thank you very much. Someone care to make the recommended motion? Moved Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Perino. Any need for discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Councillor Gesselbrock. Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much. That was easy. And the next is Social Planning Grants 2025. Mr. LeBerge, the Director of Public Safety. Going to do a little introduction this morning, Mr. LeBerge. We're all familiar with Ms. Wood.
Yes, thank you, Worship. Good morning, Council. I'll keep my comments very brief. Just like the last presentation, we'll walk through the process and distribution of the social planning grants. And to do that, I'd like to introduce our new social planner, Ms. Rosalie Sawry, who joined us about 2 months ago. So I'll turn it over to her.
Good morning,
Good morning and welcome.
Thank you. 5 weeks, actually. Thank you very much, Your Worship and Council. This report presents staff's recommendations for the 2025 social planning grant allocations. Since 2001, the city has allocated $85,000 annually to nonprofit societies, neighborhood associations, and/or recognized faith groups in Nanaimo. The purpose of the grant is to assist organizations in responding to social issues with initiatives that enhance social cohesion, address the root causes and effects of poverty, and foster social inclusion and equity. In 2016, the grant program was divided into 2 categories. We did $25,000 for smaller projects under the Community Vitalities Grant and $60,000 for larger scale projects under the Social Response Grants. With these 2 streams, there was a lack of clear definitions, excuse me, for larger or smaller projects, and applications were evaluated based on the same overall granting assessment criteria. Therefore, during this funding cycle, staff decided to eliminate the distinction between the 2 streams to avoid confusion for applicants. The report provides a timeline for your information of the grants. This year, we received 19 social planning grant applications with a total amount of $306,390 requested. A list of each applicant with a summary of their project and the amount requested is included in Attachment A. Applications were evaluated based on the merit of the proposal, alignment with the city priorities, especially a healthy Nanaimo, and the potential community impact. Each submission was given a score from 4 review committee members from both the public safety and finance departments, which were then combined and averaged. Staff recommend allocating, excuse me, the full budget of $85,000 to 7 applications that scored the highest. The 7 are listed in the staff report and in the recommendation posted here above. And that concludes my presentation. We're happy to answer any questions. I have Ms. Wood with me.
Thank you very much. Any questions, Ms. Sari? Oh, come on. Just, somebody has something. Are you enjoying the job?
It's excellent, yes.
Good.
Everyone's very great. Oh, thank you.
Someone care to make the recommended motion? Moved Councillor Hemmons, seconded Councillor Perino. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. That was easy. Thank you very much. The next is the Park Amenity Improvement Requests under Partners in Parks Program. Ms. Osborne, Ms. Davis, good morning.
Good morning again. The purpose of this report today is to provide information on 3 Partners in Parks program requests to the Finance and Audit Committee for consideration and approval. Reports before you provide the details on 3 requested funding sources for 3 different Partners in Parks. First one would be $45,000 for a hard surface sport court for the Everest Drive Park. The second would be $15,000 for storage and seating at the Beaufort Forest Food Park, and $40,000 for a shade structure and platform at the Steve Smith Bike Park. Staff have worked with these organizations and come forward with these recommendations. Deputy Director of Parks and National Areas, Charlotte Davis, is here today to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Perino, then Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship. And a question through to either Ms. Davis or Ms. Osborne. I'm just wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about what their requirement is as far as fundraising. I see it particularly under the Everest Drive Park, but could you talk about that just a bit? Like, how long do they have? What happens if they can't raise the money and so forth?
All right, I'll refer to Ms. Davis to answer.
Ms. Davis.
Good morning. Through the chair to Councillor Perino. There's a variety of ways in which these groups can partner with the city through this programme. Sometimes it's fundraising and sometimes it's work in kind. And in the case with the Everest Park project, it's going to be volunteer work in kind, so there isn't that need to do the fundraising on that one. But there is absolutely the opportunity to do that with some of our other ones that we have in the past.
Okay. My next question, if I may, can we give a portion of the amount requested that you've recommended, or is it an all or none?
You could opt to do that, though I would say that it would kind of affect the ability of the group to deliver the project. I would also mention that these funds are not able to be carried forward. And so we're looking to allocate the 2020 funds here for the PIP program, for which we have $100,000 every year.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you for the report. I'm a big supporter of Partners in Parks program. I'm the chair of the Regional Parks and Trails Committee at the RDN, and we talk about this program and its success and its value. My question for you is, we do have capital programming or projects in place. I'm thinking of the sport court resurfacing at Deverell Square. How do we filter in the Partners in Parks projects with projects that are already in the capital plan?
That's a great question. What I would say with those ones is these are community development projects. These PIP projects often come to us. They're often created when a member of the public calls us and say, hey, we've got 50 kids in this playground and it's really not meeting our needs anymore, or how about this? We've got a group of cyclists that we would like to support. And it's really something maybe that's quite niche to that neighborhood and that specific area. So there's that desire to bring that forward. And then when it's something that comes to our capital plan, it might be something that's for a greater benefit for the city of Nanaimo, the wider community, and something that might be as driven by city plan as it is by the community. We always work with our community partners. For example, on the Deverell Sports Court, we have been in communication with the neighbourhood there, but that might be something that's seen as a greater benefit and something that we want to drive forward outside of the PIP project. Does that answer the question?
A little bit. So the court resurfacing at Deverell is not a PIP project. That's in the capital plan. I'm curious about how you determine the priority between the capital plan projects that are very similar to a Partner in Parks project to a Partners in Parks project.
We match with bringing forward projects to the capital plan. We always make sure that they meet what is written within our strategic plan and the City of Nanaimo integrated action plans. That project at Deverell was very specific to that one, which set out a priority for that one, so we brought that project forward. And then with PIP, like I said, they're often driven by the community. So when we're bringing forward those larger capital projects, we always try to make sure there's that strategic connection. And these ones might be more driven directly by a small pocket of the community.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm not seeing any further. Mr. Councillor Perino.
Sorry, Your Worship, one other question. Back in early November, there were a couple of parks that the council was invited to go and see. One of them was the Everest Park. So it's interesting that it's here. Just help to put context to what it was. There was another park at the same time. Why is that park not on this list, for example?
Without knowing which one specifically, it's likely due to the fact that we haven't been able to develop the project as quickly as these ones, or to the same degree. Okay. We always want to make sure that our projects are able to be delivered within a suitable time frame. And so it's likely that our parks planner is still working with that group to bring it to a fruition for 2025.
Good response. Thank you so much.
I must say, having visited the Everest Park site, it's a wonderful opportunity. Busy neighborhood with lots of interesting people living in the neighborhood nearby.
If I may.
And Councillor Thorpe.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Following up on Councillor Perino's question, would it be fair to say that projects appear on our list here at the table mainly due to how well organized the community group is in terms of getting their act together as fundraising and work in kind and so on. So if they have everything in order and the city can accommodate them, then they move up the priority list.
Through the chair to Councillor Thorpe, absolutely correct, yes. The groups are highly organised to get to this point. They've really got their act together.
Right, and some it just takes longer to do that.
Yes.
Thank you. I'll move the recommendation, Your Worship, if we're ready.
Yes, seconded Councillor Hemmons. Any discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Appreciate this. The next is the BC Hydro Sustainable Communities Fund, Phase 2 of Manufactured Home Park Energy Conservation Emissions Reduction Strategy. Now there's a mouthful. Mr. Holm, you're just going to hand this over to Mr. Stewart, are you? Or?
Mr. Stewart is here available to answer questions. I'll try and do a brief introduction, and which may lead to questions, depending on how I do. So anyway, so I'll try and not put pressure on Mr. Stewart, but briefly this builds on, this is sort of the second phase of a project that the city and the RDN partnered on, looking to try and tackle the challenge of identifying electrical capacity constraints to servicing manufactured homes in manufactured home parks for electrical upgrades to allow for fuel switching and EV charging eventually down the road. Those parks are a challenge because the servicing to the park is controlled by the landlord, yet the manufactured homes are obviously owned by individuals. So there's some challenge around that. Previously, the city partnered with the regional district on an earlier phase of a study to assess how we can tackle that. That was supported by BC Hydro as well. What we're proposing here, there's a grant opportunity through BC Hydro. They'll provide up to $30,000, and the city would contribute, as proposed, through the Climate Action Reserve, $24,000 plus in-kind staff contribution to do a more refined assessment of the challenges and this upgrade opportunities, identify sort of a park level upgrade approach that could be replicated in other parks to support electrical upgrades to help with energy efficiency upgrades, fuel switching for manufactured homes, as well as potentially for EV charging in the future. I'm happy to take questions, probably direct them to Mr. Stewart if need be. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Not seeing any questions. We're going to let poor Mr. Stewart off easily this morning. Who could oppose asking for money? Moved Councillor Hemmons, seconded Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Mr. Stewart, thank you for your walk-on appearance this morning. The next is the Sea Level Rise Management Plan grant applications. Mr. Holm.
Thank you. This actually builds on an earlier study done by the city in 2019. The city undertook a sea level rise study to identify what future projected sea level might look like in 2050 and 2100. As part of that study and transferred into the integrated action plan, as a recommended action item is a further refinement of a sea level rise management plan, which is a more refined study looking at the inundation modeling in vulnerable areas of the city, as well as economic risk assessment and evaluation of options to manage sea level rise in those sensitive, vulnerable areas. So this is an opportunity. We've identified opportunity for 2 grant applications here that would support that work. There's a breakdown in the report that outlines how we would approach the funding or the project, depending on whether or not we're successful in one, the other, both, or neither of the grant applications. turn that over to Mr. Stewart or Ms. Pan to walk you through the funding scenarios and how we might approach the project. But in any event, there's a Ministry of Emergency Management and Climate Readiness grant application opportunity for up to $400,000. There's also an FCM, Federation of Canadian Municipalities grant application opportunity of up to $105,000. And the report outlines how the project would address sea level rise management planning in the city, and how those grants would be used to fund the project. I'm happy to take questions or turn them to Mr. Stewart. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Holm. Councillor Manley, then Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, just a quick question through you. I know we want to do this waterfront walkway at some point, and I imagine sea level rise is going to be a factor in how that's designed. So would this grant help us with preparing that case for the waterfront walkway, and what we would need to do to ensure that it's viable into the future?
Mr. Stewart.
Yeah, sure. Through the mayor, absolutely. This project will help us prepare for capital projects such as the waterfront walkway or anything else within the potential inundation area of sea level rise. So we've identified through the 2019 sea level rise study that was completed some vulnerable areas. Departure Bay is one of them. The downtown core, the rest of the sea level walkway area generally isn't necessarily. Like anything within Newcastle Channel obviously is a little bit more protected and a little more elevated. But absolutely what we're looking for through this project is some solutions and protection options. So whether that's a green shores type strategy or something else, we're looking at options to protect our infrastructure, both what's there now and then planning for the future, and that would include the waterfront walkway.
Okay, and any inundation studies for, I know we have a lot of parts of the community that are up on cliffs, and sea level rise is going to affect some of those neighborhoods, so that would be included in the study as well. Those are vulnerable areas considered?
Yeah, so again, through the chair, the project has got a number of phases that are outlined in the council report, and one of those phases is related to shoreline erosion, coastal erosion. That was a recommendation, again, in the 2019 sea level rise study. We are looking for 2 separate grants. If we receive both grants, we will absolutely work on a coastal erosion study. If we only receive one of the grants, there will likely not be enough funding to include the coastal erosion piece, and that may be something else we'll look to do in the future. Okay. But absolutely, we've identified the North Slope in particular as being vulnerable to coastal erosion, and there is more work we can do on monitoring what needs to be done there.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm in support. Good luck with the grant.
Thank you. Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Your Worship, and a question through you to Mr. Stewart. A couple of funding questions, if I might, and I apologize if I've missed something in the report, but my understanding is if we get the 2 grants, there's no implication to property tax. Is that correct? And if we do get the 2 grants, even if we get one of them, how long is it good for? In other words, do we have, are we covered for a year or 2 or 3? What's the time length that it would give us? Or do we know?
Yeah, great question. In terms of the timeline for funding with the FCM grant, which is still the smaller of the 2 grants, we have about 2 years. With the grant through Emergency Management and Climate Readiness, to be honest, I'm not entirely sure. I believe it's also around approximately 2 years to get the project done, but we've just submitted an expression of interest, so there will be another step if we're accepted for that expression of interest. And at that point, we'll discuss timelines with them.
Thank you. And more questions, if I may. How many staff would we be hiring for these positions to do this work?
Yeah, so the project will be co-led by myself and staff in engineering, Carmi Simpson, and then we would be bringing in other staff from other departments kind of as a working group. But most of the work would fall on myself and the engineer. And again, we would also obviously be looking at a consultant to support us through this project.
So other than the consultant, there wouldn't be necessarily staff that we would be engaging for the long term?
Other than myself and Ms. Simpson, yeah.
Yeah, my concern is obviously once the grant is gone, then what happens? Are we into property tax to pay for that staff person.
Thank you. Yeah, I understand the concern. I think in terms of where I think we'll have the intent of the report is to get some implications and further actions. It would be more capital actions. Those may have property tax implications, but the report would be there to inform us of what that cost benefit is in terms of the cost of those solutions versus the cost of not doing those solutions and the risks.
Okay, and my final question is, if we don't get either, is it your goal to come back to the table to ask for funding? Is that correct? Sorry, I shouldn't have posed that question to you, Mr. Stewart. I'm sorry to put you on the spot. But my assumption would be that, is that the case?
Yeah, through the chair. So this is, if, obviously we hope to be successful in the grant. And, this is important work that will help the city long-term prepare for and manage the impacts of sea level rise. Obviously, there's, as Mr. Stewart and as Councillor Manley had alluded to, there are capital, there are infrastructure implications in the long term. There's private property implications to sea level rise, so this is definitely important work that we'll want to that'll inform decisions in the future that we'll want to execute on at some point. We'll continue, if we're not successful in these grant applications, we'd obviously come back and have a conversation. There would be a budget decision conversation around the council table. We'll continue to look for other grant opportunities, but it is work that it is priority action work that will inform decisions going forward for council in the way of investments in capital and managing existing assets and private property implications in the community. So I think, yeah, if we're not successful in these grants, we would be looking for other grant opportunities and coming back to try and identify where this would fit into future planning work going forward. But something we definitely want to bring up with council and encourage that work to take place sooner than later. It's been identified, obviously, in a 2019 sea level rise study as a key piece of information to support decision making. Okay. As well as in the integrated action plan.
Okay. Just to say, Your Worship, that given our high tax rate this year, I'm not so sure that I would be supportive if we were using property tax. But the fact that we're going after good grants, and they're a large sum of money, and we hope to get them, that for that reason alone, I'm in favor. Thank you.
Why don't you move the first of the motions then?
I'll move them.
Moved, seconded Councillor Hemmons. Any discussion on the first motion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. And the second motion? Councillor Manley, seconded Councillor Hemmons. Any discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motions carry. Thank you very much, Mr. Stewart. Appreciate your attendance this morning. The next is Provincial Capacity Funds Allocation Update. Mr. Holm, please.
Great. Thank you, Your Worship. So earlier this year, the city received funding of $619,000, $619,936 in what the province is calling capacity funding. It's to assist local governments in implementing the broad suite of legislative changes that the province enacted related to, largely related to housing, and council's familiar with much of that work through different reports and points of contact and bylaw amendments that we've had. There's work ongoing still in 2024. Council is going to, before the end of the year, receive a housing needs report related to that work. That's one of the items that we funded through the capacity funds. There's more work lined up for 2025, some significant work. The report outlines where staff are suggesting that the capacity funds be spent to implement the provincial legislative amendments. We had earlier in April this year suggested where the money would be allocated, and this report provides an update on some adjustments to the allocation of the capacity funds based on some work that's been completed and some work that's proposed for 2025. I'm happy to take any questions on that. Just mention that the funding is expected to be used by the end of 2025, December 31st, 2025, at which point the province has outlined that all the legislative changes, the municipalities are meant to have enacted all the required bylaw amendments to meet the legislative changes by the end of 2025, and this capacity funding is to support that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the report. The allocations seem reasonable. This is your world, not mine. I'm curious, though, this legislation landed on the desks of local government and came with this funding. Is the funding adequate?
It helps.
Can you?
It's a very political answer for a senior public servant.
My apologies. Sorry, through the chair.
No, I'm impressed.
Well, no. I mean, there's so many implications to the changes that we're still digesting. This helps with some of the. There's a lot of consulting work required, a lot of assessment, analysis, planning work required to fund to identify. You've seen on the list development cost charge update, amenity cost charge update. There's the housing needs report. So there's a bunch of work needed to do to prepare to understand the implications and how local governments, and in this case, City of Nanaimo, will need to possibly change their servicing, planning work, and funding for infrastructure upgrades to address the legislative changes. So it helps with that work, sort of the base level understanding and implementing some of the planning work and bylaw amendments that are needed to support the legislation. It doesn't deal with, obviously, the funding of the infrastructure or staff capacity
the staff is what I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it doesn't deal with the funding of the infrastructure or the staff capacity to really follow through on that work.
Thank you.
That's been absorbed, and obviously, council's considering through this process, staffing through the budget this year, increased staffing that will help with some of that, and as well, going forward, we have had to push off some projects that we had on our books that were in the work plans for 2024 and 2025. We've made some adjustments. Some of it aligned well because of the timing of city plan with work that we had planned anyway, and we're adjusting, and we will be bringing forward updates in the new year on that suite of work that we have planned for 2025. But to the question, yeah, it doesn't address staffing or the servicing upgrades, the infrastructure needed. But
thank you. So a follow-up, if I may, and that's around. So we're obviously not the only municipality dealing with this. We're obviously not the only municipality struggling with staff capacity to deal with this. So those consultants are we able to recruit and retain? And I imagine people who are in the consulting business right now in this realm are busy and making a lot of money.
Yeah, through your worship, that's accurate. Great observation. We've been fortunate at this point. We're preparing to go out for RFP on a couple of projects for next year. So we'll see what we get for responses. Up to this point, we've been quite successful with some of the work that we've had to do. We had consultants engaged in, for instance, in a development cost charge project at the time the legislative changes came out. So Paul Rosen, Director of Engineering, his crew is leading the project. They were able to make adjustments with the consultant and pivot to add the additional work. We were also able to engage. We had just done, fortunately, a housing needs report, for instance. We were able to re-engage the consultant that had assisted us with that work. So we've been fortunate in ways. We'll see with the upcoming projects how competitive the market is and what sort of responses we get. But yeah, good observation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further questions for staff? If not, move the recommend motion, Councillor Perino, seconded Councillor Hemmons. Not seeing any discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. And the next is the security check grant request from the Nanaimo Science and Sustainability Society. Ms. Mercer, I'm sure we will spend a great deal of time having regard to the amount of money involved here. And I'm cheekily going to suggest next time somebody wants $50, don't advertise it. Just tell them to phone. I'll kick in the $50 myself and save staff the time.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the Nanaimo Science and Sustainability Society has applied for a security grant in the amount of $50. They have met the eligibility criteria, so we're just looking for direction on how you want to proceed with this application.
Before I ask for the motion, and I see we have lots of commentary on this, did this arise out of the previous council's concerns around RCMP checks, or has this been around for a while?
It has been, this is the process that we've always taken with this grant stream. It's part of the other grant stream, so it's always been like this.
And it has to come to council?
We could, if council wanted to direct staff to review the applications and award that way. Normally they're not this low, and we have a max of $500 per organization. So normally they're a little bit bigger, but they're only asking for one.
Mr. Lindsay.
Your Worship, I think this is one that certainly I had the same thoughts when I saw this report, and I think it's something that we'll take away and come back to whether it's something we can actually delegate to staff, because I'll promise you we spent more than $50 preparing the staff report for you to consider the $50.
Thank you, Mr. Lindsay. Councillor Thorpe and then Councillor Perino.
Thanks, Your Worship. I just wanted to fulfill your prediction that we'd have a lengthy debate on this. No, I did have a question. I noted in the report that we have an annual budget of $2,000 for this program, and if we approve this $50 request, we still have $1,950 left. So obviously we don't get a lot of uptake on this, and that tells me that most people are not aware of it, because I think it's an excellent program, and I'm pleased that the city offers it. So good on us. But I'm surprised that there isn't more uptake. What is $50 the cost of one security check these days?
Through the chair, yes, it's for one. And in some years, we've used a good portion of the budget, and other years we don't have any applications. So it's a real mix of some years we get some, and some years we don't get many. So.
Okay, thank you.
I do hope that Councillor Thorpe is not going to make a motion that we spend some money on advertising to give away money that nobody's taking. No, thank you. Oh, goodness. Councillor Perino.
Just to add to the vicious debate on this issue, I actually thought the $50 was an error. I thought there had to be more zeros. So it was good to hear that it was in fact $50. And I was very pleased to hear that our CAO is suggesting that maybe this should be a staff function to just allocate the money when it's this low, because what a waste of staff time and so forth. But anyway, I'll put the motion on the floor.
Thank you very much. Moved Councillor Perino, seconded Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Sorry. The next is the Health Canada Emergency Treatment Fund. Ms. Mercer, please.
Thank you. So this report is to inform the committee that the city has submitted an application for Health Canada's Emergency Treatment Fund program. This program provides financial assistance to municipalities, First Nations, Inuit, and Métis communities to address urgent needs and support rapid responses to toxic drug use and overdose crisis. Staff have submitted an application to purchase and fully outfit 3 electric fleet vehicles for the CSO team. And the budget for that is approximately $442,752. If successful, the 2025 to 2029 financial plan would be updated to include it. And if it was not successful, the project would not move forward at this time. So staff are happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you very much. Councillor Prino?
No tax dollars, Your Worship, is that correct? No property tax? Thank you, I'm in favor, thank you. I'll put the motion on the floor.
No,
There's no motion, so, yeah, fine, thank you.
just receipt for information.
Yep.
We're okay, Ms. Mercer?
Yep.
All right. Thank you very much. The next is other business, and we have the 2025-2029 financial plan update. And Ms. Fulla, please.
Good morning, Council. We wanted to provide the committee with a brief update on the provisional budget and what the property tax increase looks at now that we've included all the direction that we received from the committee last Friday. And I do have a PowerPoint slide here, just waiting for them. So after we've incorporated the changes that we received last Friday, the budget increase, the provisional budget includes an increase of 7.9% in 2025 and 7.1% in 2026. Now, I did want to point out this is slightly higher than we projected at the meeting on Friday, and this is due to additional supplements that have been processed this week. So to clarify what supplements are for everyone, when BC Assessment rules on an appeal of a property's assessment, the city is advised of the impact, if any, on the city's property tax base. If appeal is successful, a supplement report is received by the city, and we recalculate the taxes owing on the property, and in most cases, we issue a refund. So we have received some, the BC Assessment has ruled on some appeals, and they have lowered the assessment on some properties. We have issued a refund, but this now impacts our property tax base, and that has resulted in pushing us from the 7.8 we were projecting to 7.9 in 2025. So I just wanted to advise the committee of that, and that will be in the report and part of the bylaw that goes for first 3 readings on Monday night at council.
Thank you very much. How low did we get on Monday before we started bumping it up again? Down to 6.9 or 7? Ms. Mercer, can you recall?
I believe it was 6.9.
6.9, and now we're back up to 7.9. All right. Thank you very much. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm hoping that staff can add the slide regarding the Nanaimo prosperity request. And I'll just begin by apologizing for not being here for the debate. I had a library meeting that I was chairing and couldn't get out of. My vice chair was ending 8 years of service, and I didn't want his last thing to be chairing a meeting. So apologies that I missed this. I'm going to argue, Ms. Fulla, there was an option 2. Thank you. I am gonna argue in support of option 2. Your Worship, would you like me to make the motion? And then have it seconded and then debate? If so, I will make that motion.
As I recall, there was no motion per se last time. Correct, Ms. Vicar?
Your Worship, so the meeting on Friday, there was a motion at one point on the floor regarding deferral, I believe, but that failed. And so no action was taken further to that.
That's what I'm getting at. There was no motion passed respecting any increase is what I'm getting at. All right.
So then I will make the motion to increase, sorry, I'm having trouble seeing this. Option number 2, increasing the base funding to 6,600. To that amount. I need more coffee. Oh.
There's a seconder.
Is there a seconder? Thank you. Okay, so my argument here, thanks folks for entertaining me. Prosperity has never been fully funded. It's been running now for, I believe, 2.5 years. We had some difficulty attracting a CEO. I'm going to be really honest about that, and I think part of the reason that we had difficulty attracting a CEO is because we do have a history with economic development in this community, and I think underfunding this service contributes to that continued perception of Nanaimo's commitment to economic development. I also want to share that I heard from a couple of stakeholders that I sit at the table with, and these are big stakeholders. This is the port, this is Nanaimo, this is the university. These are people that we asked to come on this journey with us of economic development. And it's unique in that when they were members, and not specifically them, but previous economic development models didn't actually have a stakeholder piece. So when I say Nanaimo and VIU and the port are at the table, they're there as paying members of this, they're contributing dollars. And so I think when we as a council, and I actually went back and watched the debate from last year, we acknowledged that it was underfunded. We acknowledged that this conversation would continue to come up until it was funded appropriately. In terms of regional economic development and growth, we're expecting a 40,000 population increase in 25 years. So having people who are driving our regional economic development in line with how we saw it envisioned in the economic development plan, I think is going to be vital as we contemplate and grapple with that growth. We also, last year when we debated this, the CEO was not yet hired, he wasn't on the ground, and now we do. We have Colin Stansfield, he's been here for 6 months, he's making great inroads. NPC showed up at VIE, I think, in a really great way this year. And just, I'll land on specifics. I actually asked if council were to increase this amount, what could we expect as output? And I learned that there's a federal application going in to support foreign direct investment in Nanaimo, and that would have to be scaled back. Economic Insights on Demand. This was a request of Councillor Armstrong's to look at when businesses leave Nanaimo, do we have a process for figuring out why they're leaving? That's something that the CEO would like to dive into. And then also community development. I know that we haven't kind of dipped our toe in this yet, but there's been a lot of interest in Development Corporation being housed under NPC or in partnership with NPC, and those conversations cannot be explored while it is underfunded. So I just ask for your support. This is a modest increase. This is not full funding. That's it. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. In order, Councillor Perino and then Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Your Worship. And a question through, I suspect to staff, however, if Councillor Hemmons, if that's easier. So as Councillor Hemmons said, this position, they've been trying actually to seek someone for 2 years and found and hired this past spring. I'm wondering about money that was put aside for taxation in 2023 and the portion of 2024 where we did not have a staff person. What happens to that money, and could that be moved forward to this case? That's my first question.
Through the chair to Councillor Perino. So in 2023, the full amount of just around 585,000 was paid over to the Nanaimo Prosperity Corporation. And so from the city side of things, we've fully expended the budget. And my understanding is on the Nanaimo Prosperity side, there was funds left over from 2023 that they carried into 2024, and that helped their budget in 2024. It sounds like, again, they'll have a bit of carry forward, again, that they can carry into 2025, and therefore the lower budget of bumping it up to 665,000 and their carry forward would be sufficient budget for them.
To get through. Okay. How does this affect, my second question, if I may, how does this affect the tax rate?
Through the chair to Councillor Perino, it's a 0.1% tax increase.
So we go to 8 instead of 7?
It will go to 8%.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong, Gesselbrock, and Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you. Yes, based on the comments supplied by Councillor Hemmons, at first I was reluctant to support this, but I do believe some valid points were raised, and she's done a lot of engagement with the people, so I will be in support of this motion.
Thank you very much. Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, looking at the expenses that the Nanaimo Prosperity Corporation had for last year, they did have a substantial carryover, and they, had their higher operating expenses. Next year, their operating expenses are going to be lower, but they want to be able to have money to spend on programs. And I think, you know, with we want to be mindful about the tax increase, and I think, you know, we'll probably land on not giving the full funding, but there's option 2, which is an extra $100,000. And I think that's really important. You know, if we want this corporation to deliver on what we wanted at the outset and put a lot of energy, you know, all the way from when we first started in 2018, we're going to have to properly fund that. And that was between $750,000 to $1 million a year. We're still well below that. 665 doesn't really even get us to the recommended funding, but it is going to get us closer. And I think, you know, if we want somebody to champion major projects like the expansion of Nanaimo Hospital, you know, do the work to get, you know, increased investments in our community. If we want to, you know, elevate our local industries and increase our talent pool and build our local businesses, this is the money that we need to go into. And I think, you know, there is a strong mandate around strengthening community development. And that's something that's important because there's a lot of different initiatives, just even the huge need around housing that the Prosperity Corporation can support our other local agencies and you know, build out things that we need. So this is money well spent, and ultimately I think it's going to lead to improved affordability and, you know, more sustainable economy here in Nanaimo, which is good for everyone. Thank you.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Through you, yeah, I've always felt that we need to put more emphasis on economic development in our city, and I'm certainly wanting to be supportive of the corporation. I was not in favor of option number 1, and I would have preferred to defer this item until the new year so that we could have a look at our financial position overall at that point. That said, I'm prepared to support option 2 as a good compromise, and I think we should move ahead with it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and for what it's worth, I agree with everything Council has had to say this morning. You know, we may not to be able to point to a direct link between increased revenue for the city as a result of this rather small expenditure, but ultimately I'm satisfied that this is very important. I think we lost a lot of ground a few years ago, as many members of council pointed out from time to time, so let's get on with it. If I'm not seeing any further discussion, all those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much. I think it's safe to assume there's no question period. Motion to adjourn, Councillor Perino, seconded Councillor Hemmons. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate the attendance of staff this morning. Thank you.